amigos y bienvenidos a este vuestro programa Dos gatos en tierra de perros. Un podcast de actualidad donde analizamos de manera fáctica y neutral las noticias más relevantes de la política y cultura norteamericana.
Hello, I'm Joe Magaja. Thank you, friends, for being with me for another episode of Dos Gatos en Tierra de Perros. Today I have with me Mr. Steven Valdez Jr. Welcome, Steven.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me so much, Joe. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you being here. Now it sounds like you've had a wild life. I guess we might as well start at the beginning. Where were you born? Are your parents Mexican? And how did you end up becoming this world traveler?
Yeah, they are. Well, actually, it goes back further. So my parents are American, but it's actually my grandparents and my great grandparents. My grandfather, my mom's father, is actually from Tamaulipas, and my dad's grandparents are from Mexico, and I was able to trace some of my lineage and stuff. And I know a lot of my family came from Durango actually. So I would love to go down there and I know I still have some cousins, but it's hard to keep in contact now. But yeah, I started actually traveling when probably back in 2011. What motivated me was when I was a little kid, I remember growing up in the 90s, I would see these commercials from Africa of people suffering and stuff. And I remember watching it and just being like, whoa, there's something about that that caught my attention. And I just remember watching it and they would have, give water to help these kids. And I remember just seeing it and something in my spirit just kind of like lit up a little bit. Um, and I remember as I went through my life, I went through college and back in 2010, I actually was engaged to this girl. And unfortunately, things didn't work out between us. We were gonna get married in 2011. We went our separate ways, and my life was kind of at a crossroads, trying to get over the relationship breaking up. It was very, devastating. And I remember just sitting there in my room, and I'm thinking like, okay, what am I gonna do? I'm 26 years old. I gotta get a plan. And all of a sudden, the traveling thing came up, and I remember just thinking to myself, well, I mean, I grew up in a kind of a religious house, I'm Christian, and how can I use this for something good and try to serve God? So actually, initially when I first started traveling, it was actually trying to do like missionary work. Actually, I went to Panama, this organization I met in Oklahoma, and I just started doing that. And then I remember when I was down there, I remember having my headphones on. I was walking around. We stayed like at this kind of like this big yard. It was this American guy who lived down there, and he could house like 10, 15 people. And I was being in my headphones and I was listening to music. And I'm like, this is the first time in my life that I feel free. There's something about just being somewhere else that does something to your soul. And I never felt that in my entire life when I was there. And it made me want to do it again. And when people say traveling is very addicting, it's it is, And so the next year in 2012, I went to Guatemala again, the first time with this organization again. And that's really when things started kicking off because when I went down there, I ended up becoming friends with the people that we were working with. So what we do was is we would go to schools and we would talk about Jesus, talk about the gospel, and we would pray for them stuff. But the people that we worked with, there was like 5 or 6 people. I never had a connection before with people like that ever. When I was in high school, when I was in university, there was something about these people that just like we got each other. Like as soon as we just started talking, having fun. And what ended up happening is I ended up going down there 6 times within since like 2012, 2015. Yeah, just 3 years of just going on there, climbing volcanoes, just fun stuff. It was all innocent at the time. Um, and we just connected. So that was like my baseline of just starting traveling, just that moment, just that connection.
Very cool. And so you speak Spanish, or you kind of speak Spanish?
So so there's the funny part about that. So I'm Hispanic Mexican, but when my great grandfather came from Mexico, one of them, he didn't he taught my grandmother how to speak it, but he wanted her to learn English because we're American now. So he passed that on to her. So when I was a kid, I would hear my grandmother would speak to us sometimes in it, and she would make us watch novellas in Spanish. Uh, but we weren't really taught it because it's just we wanted to be American. I ended up learning more of it as I started traveling, honestly.
Cool, 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 cool. So is Oklahoma where you're from, or where did you grow up?
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, actually, I grew up in the Midwest, so I'm from the Chicagoland area. I grew up actually in a pretty rough neighborhood. So that also I think influences you because growing up like that, growing up people dying from gang activity and stuff, it makes you pretty tough, when you're sitting in your home and you hear gunshots and stuff. So I grew up in a pretty tough neighborhood.
Right. And I'm assuming that you were able to avoid the gangs and stuff by religion then? Is that what kind of kept you away from trouble yourself, or did you get into trouble?
I I think yeah, I think it was my father because my father was involved in that when he was young and his father wasn't in his life and so he eventually found God and then that made a big difference because I think when you have a good relationship with your parents, you don't want to disappoint them. And so I think that helped me not get involved. I knew a lot of guys. I grew up around this stuff. I grew up around the Latin King gang, if you're familiar with them in Chicago.
Yeah.
So I got close to knowing some of that stuff, and I think if I didn't have my dad, I probably would have been more destructive, honestly. So I think just having your father is the testament to having a more structured life, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think a lot of young gang members join the gang because they want to belong to a family, and maybe their family is a little broken up, their father
Mm,
left or something. And also, yeah, when you're a kid growing up, you're always watching your back because someone might jump you. But if you have a group of brothers, that'll back you up, then you don't have to be so afraid. And yeah, it's unfortunately it's a I mean, you know about gangs. It's a pyramid scheme. Basically the only ones that really make money and do well off the gangs is the guys at the top, and the guys at the bottom are the ones that end up carrying the drugs and the guns and doing the time. And they often set up kids that are underage because they know they won't get hard time. So they'll have them carrying the weapons and stuff like that. They do that with biker gangs too. It's
mm.
messed up, but it's kind of another monetary system. Really, it's a business like any other, but taking
Yeah.
advantage of the young, and basically throwing away the young people in your community for money. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, you don't understand that when you're young. You're just happy to have a family structure, and I lost a cousin involved in that because his father wasn't around, and I guess I grew up with a lot of people who, I remember when I graduated high school, I think it was at least 5 or 6 guys that I went to school with that ended up getting murdered and stuff. It's just as looking back on it now as getting older now, it's just like I was like so stupid, like just being out there in the street, you think you're cool, and you're like, yeah, you're not even doing anything. You're just throwing your life away. But when you're that age, you don't understand that. Yeah, I got a
Yeah,
family.
and you can make fast money on drugs. So you're like, why am I gonna work at McDonald's and make minimum wage when I can make 10 times that selling coke or whatever?
Yeah, the parties and the girls, and that's attractive to young men, and you're naive, and I think that you just feel like you're part of something, and if your mom's at work all day, and really right now in Chicagoland area in Chicago, that's still what's going on to this day. It's been going on since the 1960s, just the lack of family structure, and just we're seeing it. There's so much blood in the streets. I love my city, but it's not a safe place.
Yeah, from what I understand, now there's a whole influx of Venezuelans.
Yeah.
And I heard that the gangs actually got together to fight against them because they're like, and the gangs went to the city and said, you got to do something because, it's like the Venezuelans are more ruthless than they are. It's kind of like whenever a new gang comes into town,
Mm.
they're even worse than the previous gangs.
Yeah, I mean, they're camped out there lots of times by the police stations, and it's that's kind of what happened in Los Angeles, when El Salvadorians came. and they came to the Mexican neighborhoods. The Mexicans treated them like crap, and they created, the what was it, MS-13, and then
Yeah,
the
yeah.
violent mentality. And they brought that back when they were deported to El Salvador. I mean, yeah, that's happening. The Venezuelan thing is very complicated. Every country that I've been to down in Latin America, you never want to group people into categories. There's good and bad people in every race, obviously. But every country that I've been down there, they don't want Venezuelan people coming into their country because a lot of it is desperate and poverty, unfortunately, and that comes with crime. And yeah, in Chicago, the citizens are at that point now where they're just fed up. They're willing to vote for Donald Trump. A lot of these people are Democrats, and because they want that crime gone. The guy who's in charge, Mayor Johnson, he's done. I mean, he's not gonna get reelected, I don't think. It's just people have had it with this, and it's that mentality down there. People from Venezuela, they were taught that the government was supposed to give them stuff, the socialism mindset. So when they come here, they're looking to get handouts, unfortunately. So I think that causes resentment too, and it's also causing racial issues within the African American community and the Hispanic community too. So there's a lot of problems there.
Yeah, yeah. I have a friend in New York, and there's a lot of Venezuelans in New York too. And she noticed, because she sees them in Manhattan, and she's seen. I mean, there's all kinds of immigrants from all over the world, Africans, other parts of Latin America. But she told me she hasn't seen a skinny Venezuelan yet. They're all fat. Which usually when people come here, they're hungry and they're
Yeah,
but yeah, she said they don't seem to have that
yeah.
issue. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's a tough thing, and it's gonna be interesting to see what happens when Trump gets elected and how that's gonna affect the community. But yeah, that actually goes into some of the things that because you're talking about the traveling and stuff. Like when I first went down to Mexico in 2014, what happened was is after I got like the first taste of traveling, I wanted to do it like all the time. So I went to Mexico City and I got a course. I took a course like in ESL teaching, and I wanted to become a teacher. Man, let me tell you, working in Mexico City is rough. Have you ever been there before?
I haven't. I have a lot of friends who are Chilangos, from Mexico
Chila-
City. I know some people see that as a slur, but it's not really a slur, right? It depends on who you talk to.
Yeah, how you use it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I had one taxi driver in Las Vegas who told me he was from Mexico City, and I said, "Ah, eres Chilango," and he got offended, and he said, "No se dice Chilango, no está bien." I'm like, bro, my friends that are all Chilango, but they they call themselves Chilangos, but there was a big thing in Mexico for a while where they said, haz patria, mata un Chilango, which means, be patriotic, kill a Chilango. And for those that are listening, Chilangos are people from Mexico City. Yeah, when I first started singing in a band, well, it was a duo, and my first guitarist was from Mexico City.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard Mexicans, they always have people. It almost seems like in every country, people have a certain opinion of people about who live in the capital. They see them as different. I think in every
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah, well, I mean, Mexico is predominantly a rural culture, so they probably don't like the city slickers, they come out there and make fun of them, and they think they're so much more cultured than them, and that everything is. And I mean, in the city, you do have a little bit more of a cosmopolitan lifestyle. There's different restaurants, there's different things, whereas, you go out to other parts of Mexico and it's just Mexico, It's like
Mm.
it's like in the movie The Three Amigos, Chevy Chase is they're in Mexico and he says, "Do you have anything besides Mexican food?"
Exactly. Well, I mean, it is a fair point because, like, when you go into Polanco, Condesa, you have the fresas. Oh, no me gusta la comida. No quiero ahorita. They talk a certain way, the women, some of the
Yeah.
fresas, and there's a lot of resentment, like you said. And I also think those people live their lives in a completely different reality than most Mexicans. Um, Roma. There's a neighborhood in Mexico City called Roma. I was when I was living there, I stayed there, and all the people have little dogs, those little dogs, and
Yeah.
they have a certain walk, certain way of talking. It's not like you meet in Mexico and in Tamaulipas or the Estado de Mexico and more rough and gruff. It's a different culture.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been to Guadalajara. I was there a few years ago for the
Oh,
film
yeah.
festival. I love it there, but it does feel more like I think kind of like America used to be maybe 100 years ago. Like you walk down the street and guys are walking with cowboy hats and boots, and
Oh,
they tip their
ranchero.
hat to you, and and they'll tip their hat to you and say buenos dias, buenas tardes.
Mm.
Whereas like, out here in LA, nobody talks to each other. You can be on the street with 5 people next to you. Nobody says a word. You just look straight
Oh
ahead, do your
yeah,
thing.
that cold
Yeah.
attitude.
Yeah. And it's partly because it's like, it's crazy. You never know who you piss off somebody and they might shoot you. But, but like in Mexico, you say hello to
Yeah,
everybody, and everybody acknowledges each other. And,
that's true.
yeah, I really enjoyed Guadalajara. I definitely want to go back there.
Yeah, it's I used to date a girl from Guadalajara, and the women from Guadalajara, I mean, beautiful women. They can't deny that. The only place in Mexico that has more beautiful women are in Culiacan, but you can't go there. Uh,
Unless
yeah,
you're a narco or whatever, right?
yeah, something
Yeah.
else. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I know there's that place in Jalisco, Tequila, Jalisco. Have you
Yes,
done
yeah.
there?
I
Yeah.
didn't I was only there for the film festival. I wanted to go do some other stuff. My father has a friend who lives at Lake Chapala too, but um he was supposed to come meet me and he got confused on the date. So he was like,
Mm,
"Oh, sorry. Well, why don't you come out and see me? It's just, an hour bus ride and blah, blah." And I was like, "I'm here for the film festival. I don't have time to," but I also didn't want to take the wrong bus and end up who knows where. I wasn't familiar with the city, and my wife was kind of
yeah,
freaked out because there had been some kidnappings and stuff. So she was like, don't, be careful and
yeah.
don't leave the hotel. Go get back to your hotel before the sun goes down. I'm there for a film festival. All the movies are at night, but I'm like, okay. But I did go out one night and it was really nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's true, man. It's actually funny because that whole mindset has really altered Mexico's culture. Because when I was living in Mexico City, I would hop on Tinder sometimes and try to talk to a girl, and she would say to me, "Oh, no, 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 no citas en noche. I'm sorry, lo siento. I can't meet you at night because I don't know if you're gonna do something to me. Are you gonna kill me? Are you gonna hurt
Right.
me?" And I'm like, just trying to go on a date with you.
Yeah.
But the femicide, the killing of women down there, it's just women are literally afraid just to go out on a date. I
Mhm.
mean, they don't Mexican culture, was like at nighttime parties, go to the disco. Now, just normal Mexican people, they don't even go to the discos. They don't go to the clubs anymore because they're afraid. They don't know what's gonna happen. You'll never see, unless it's an irresponsible parent, you're not gonna see some young girl walking down the street at night unless she's running away or she's being a teenager, because you can't do it. You literally can't
Yeah.
do it in all of Mexico almost, except for maybe in the Yucatan or something. It's just literally so dangerous now. And I did some research, and I know there are Americans down there who went to get Guadalajara and they got disappeared in the street. There's
Yeah.
actually an American guy who served in the military, and he's missing right now from Mexico City since February.
Oof. Yeah, I remember just a few years ago there was a young guy from my area in Southern California from the Inland Empire who went missing in, I think it was actually in like Playa del Carmen, which is a
Mm,
very safe area, but he was down there for a wedding and he got drunk and he was at the beach and he got separated from his friends. He said he just wanted to take a walk, and then they found his body later. And then his credit card started to be used in Texas, so somebody killed him and took his stuff.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the guy that I was referencing, there's actually on video the next day, there's some guy using his debit card trying to get money out of his ATM, and I just feel so bad for that family. He's actually in a pretty safe area in Mexico City, and he took an Uber, and they have never seen him again. I mean, it's at the point now where, like I said, my ancestors are from Mexico. Just to give some reference, like I lived in Mexico for a year. I've lived there from 2014 to 2015, and I also lived there a couple times in 19 and 20. And it's a beautiful country, beautiful land, a lot of just amazing things, but the country is so corrupt now. And I really think that from living down there, I learned very quickly that nobody can trust the police. That you can't go to them for anything, you know what I mean? And being down there, everywhere you go, walking in Mexico City, Mexico, desaparecido, disappearing pictures. My
Ooh.
daughter's missing, my child's missing. I was down there living there when the 43 students went missing, and the
Yeah,
protesting was crazy.
and they were murdered by the government, right? Or by the
Yeah, the
army.
governor.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. What do you think about AMLO and Scheinbaum?
Oh yeah. Those, you know what, those people to me, they're just as bad as El Chapo Guzman. They're no different. They know exactly what's going on because everything in Mexico doesn't matter. The president, the club you go to in Cancun, it's all controlled by certain criminal organizations. And the lady's in charge now, she's talking a really tough game right now. But she needs those tourist dollars. And if Americans stop coming to Mexico, what are they gonna do? So
Yeah.
they're gonna have to go along with what Trump says, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know that there was a lot of controversy because when she was inaugurated, she didn't invite the King and Queen of Spain, which they've been invited for the
Mm.
last 100 years to the or more than that, to the inauguration of whoever is the new president of Mexico. But she said that they need to apologize for the way Spain treated the indigenous people, um, and a lot of
Yeah.
people, a lot of Spaniards were like, well, you have like thousands of people dying a month in your country from narcos, but you're worried about something that happened 500 years ago. What's going on now? And it's kind of I don't know if it's a distraction, or if she really, but she is kind of like the AOC. It seems like a little bit of Mexico because she cosplays a little bit. She dresses like an indigenous person, even though she's Jewish. She's not indigenous. She wears a cross when she's not Christian.
Uh,
But at least as far as I know, I mean, she's Jewish. So,
yeah.
and her parents are immigrants. Which is fine. It's great. I think that's one thing Mexico, a lot of people don't understand that Mexico is also a country of immigrants, and there are people from all over the world there.
That's
And they
true.
accept them. And if you move there and you get citizenship, you're as Mexican as everybody else. Just like if you move here and
Hmm.
you get citizenship, you're American. It doesn't matter where you're born. Um, but yeah, and that's what the comedian Louis C.K. is Mexican, his father.
Oh,
And
that's right. I
yeah,
forgot about
and he
that.
he grew up in Mexico well till he was 8, but he can't really speak the language anymore. But they people asked him because they're like, well, how are you Mexican? You're a redhead, you look like some Irish kid. And he said, well, Mexico is a country of immigrants.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks all the people from Mexico are brown, but you have every culture. You have Asians, you have black people, you have everything there. But usually it's the indigenous people that end up coming here because they're the poorest and they need the work. But
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Like when I remember the first time I went to Cancun and I finally started seeing African Mexican, I was like, oh man, like in the South of Mexico, it's, you don't even realize it. And you're right. Like it's almost just like Brazil, you know what I mean? There's a lot of different cultures. And I I question the person who's in charge of Mexico, that lady. They all come in, they are, oh, we got a plan, we're gonna fix things. Nothing ever changes. It's just the same story. Every president since 2006, things have just gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. And it's getting to the point now where I'm even questioning how much more longer I can keep going to Mexico, because we talked before this recording. There are certain things I'm not going to even say on this recording just out of fear because I want to be able to go back down there and have fun. But how do I know who's watching this later on? I mean, it just got to the point now where it's gotten so bad, it's gotten so violent. And for her to sit there and say, "Oh, we want to talk about what happened 500 years ago," it's like, listen, my family is my ancestors are from Mexico. If Spain didn't come, I probably wouldn't even be here. Like it happened in the past. It's over. Like just let it go. Just stop. And that's to me, it's woke stuff in my opinion.
yeah, and this kind of stuff is going on all over the world now too, and it's affecting Europe. I think basically a lot of this stuff is just a distraction, and
Hmm.
I'm not sure what the long-term plan is, but it seems like there are some people who the globalists kind of, it seems like they want chaos. They want to throw a wrench into the system so that everything is kind of out of control, and they think maybe that's how they can take over. But I don't know
Hmm.
what the long-term plan is, but it scares me because you know, everybody talks about the fascists, or so many people are talking about fascists. They call Trump a fascist or a Nazi and all this stuff. And really, there's the far right and the far left, but they're both totalitarian. If you get too far to the right, you're almost to the left, because it's the same thing. The citizens don't have freedom of speech. They don't have freedom to do anything. And now I understand there's a new law in Spain where for tourists to travel to Spain, if you check into a hotel, you're going to have to give a lot of information, not just your name, but also your bank account numbers and all kinds of personal information. They want to know what the relationship is between you and the person you're traveling with. It's kind of crazy. And I think a lot of people, Spain is also a country that depends highly on tourism. I think it's going to turn off a lot of people, because you don't want to answer a lot of questions, and you don't want people to have information about your bank accounts. That's your business. It's kind of crazy, but they want to do that. It seems like they want to, they're trying to digitalize money and get rid of cash altogether. And, that's why they're kind of fighting crypto. It seems like, they don't want crypto because they want to have their own money in there so they can see where you're spending all your money. And if they don't like it, they can freeze your account, or they can, and of course, take taxes out, which I used to be all, I come from a leftist background, myself, my family was all Democrats. And I was like, I have no problem paying taxes, but now that you see that the money doesn't go where it's supposed to go, it's basically taxation without representation, because, we still have potholes in our roads. We still have tons of homeless people flooding our streets, and we don't have universal health care. We don't get, at least in Europe, they have high taxes, but they have a lot of bang for their buck. They have clean streets. They have, it's getting to be not as safe as it used to be, but it used to be very safe. Madrid used to be one of the safest cities in the world. Now they have a lot more violence, and I hate to say it, but they have a lot more Latin Americans and people from other countries too.
It's true though.
Yeah. The Latin Kings were there, and when I lived there were very few murders, and the murders were usually between people who knew each other, like families that fought, that kind of thing. And it was very rarely with guns, because they have strict gun laws there too. But now, with different gangs, and there's a lot more violence. It's kind of changing the culture.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, it's disturbing. I think as an American, I understand that there's a lot of things about Trump that people don't like, and I know he rubs people the wrong way, and that's fine. People don't have to like him. One of the things I respect about him, though, is he's an American first person. And when I see what just happened in Germany with that terrorist attack, the car, and I see what's going on in Spain and the other European countries, I'm like, look, I don't have a problem with people being in the country, coming in. My family, when they came from Mexico, back then it was obviously different. It was easier to come. I know it's not easy to come to the USA because the legal system is so messed up, and I don't blame people trying to have a better life. They're trying to survive. And so I understand that. I really do. But it's just like when we have our own veterans walking in the street talking to themselves, they're homeless. Like we can't keep doing this. At some point, enough is enough. And it would be such a big deal. You see what's going on in El Salvador. I think we talked about this before. It's like if more of those countries were doing that, this would solve a lot of issues for our country, the United States.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like you said before, how Mara Salvatrucha really started out here and then was imported to El Salvador from here. But they came, when they came out here, the Salvadorians, they had come from a brutal war. And often people who come out of war end up becoming gangsters because they don't really have a compunction about killing people or violence, So they bring their trauma to us, and then and then it becomes our problem too, but but really, so it's kind of like the hens come home to roost, or what's the saying?
Come home to roost. Yeah,
because basically we supported a lot of those wars in Latin America, and a lot of the wars across the world, like now in Syria, and I'm sure, well, in the past few years, we've gotten so many refugees, millions of refugees, or different people crossing the border, not just from Mexico, but from all over the world. And I'm sure some of them came from very violent, desperate circumstances, and probably won't think twice to kill someone if they
Yeah.
have to, or if they feel they can benefit from it. It's
Uh,
life. Yeah,
It's
we
absolutely true. I mean,
Mm.
living in the third world like I have, I've lived in Thailand, I've lived in Vietnam, lived in Mexico, I lived in Colombia. Life is cheaper down there. I mean, there are places in Mexico where, okay, I want this person taken out. Okay, here's $100, go take care of it for me. In Mexico City, there's a place called Tapito. It's a market, and you can buy fake Jordans, fake iPhone, but it's also a place where if you want to take somebody out, you go there. Everyone in Mexico City knows that place. I mean, it's just ingrained in the culture. When I lived in Thailand, people would get maimed and ran over by a car. Okay, move the body to the side. Let's keep it moving. I mean, life is just cheap. I mean, people don't understand in the West that, in Western countries, we value certain things. Oh, people hate the United States. Like, yeah, but go live in Thailand, go live in Mexico, live in Colombia for a while, and you see how much they care about you. I mean, and I think that the story of Latin America in a lot of ways is what you were saying about the violence. Like in Colombia, it was La Violencia. For a long time they had that civil war in Colombia, and Guatemala the same thing. I mean, it's just that bloodshed and that terror, that trauma doesn't go away fast. It stays inside the culture for many years.
Yeah, and if you see that when you're young, that's part of what forms you. I mean, really, they say that your first 6 years of life really give you um, your view of the world for the rest of
Mm,
your life. Which is crazy, but um, I mean, for me, I was lucky because my first part of my life was partly in Spain, which was a very peaceful
mm,
and loving, caring, warm atmosphere,
mm,
and California, but in the suburbs in the
mhm,
1970s, where you could go out and play until the streetlights come on, and
mm.
we would just disappear, me and my brother, and do whatever. Now you can't do that, because
Yeah,
yeah, all the kids are latchkey kids, and basically it seems like they're all playing video games,
yeah,
which adds to obesity and everything
yeah.
else. It's a different world. And I mean, there were child molesters and stuff back then, but it just wasn't in the news so much, and it wasn't. I'm sure that it happened. I know it happened, but I don't think it was as uh, prolific as it is
Pronounced.
now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I remember being a kid in the 90s. I remember everyone was out there in the summer. Our parents was, let's go out, come back home at night. We'd be outside playing for 8 hours. Around my neighborhood, I still see kids sometimes being out, but it's not like how it was when I was a kid. Everyone's on their phone now.
Yeah.
And it's just changed the culture, I think, entire world actually.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So were you doing missionary work in Thailand as well?
Okay, so that's when things I wanted to change things actually. So I did that, and then after I had said that I was in Mexico, I lived there for about a year, Mexico City, and it's really hard because I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I didn't understand how to sell myself as a teacher. I didn't understand interviews back then. So I landed, I did it, and I had to go back home in 2016, and I was really kind of upset because I didn't feel like I accomplished my goal. So I decided, like, well, maybe the market in Latin America isn't, really good for me. So let me try Asia because all the teachers that I knew who were doing well actually went to Asia. So I go to Asia 2015, well, 2014, I take a 2-week trip there to Thailand, and I'm in, like, culture shock because I never dealt with that level of heat and the way that people were. But I was really young still at the time, so I just I'm gonna go do it. And so I went there in July of 2015. I went there to start living there. And what ended up happening was, so this is where things get kind of ugly, is that in Asian culture, they worship white skin. That's what they love that. That's what they're taught. And they don't see it as being racist. They see it as just being a part of the culture. So when I would apply for jobs in Thailand and in China, they would literally tell me in the email, "Are you black?" I'm like, "Well, no." And I'm like, "Well, you look black." And I'm like, "But I'm not." Well, that's a problem. We can't hire somebody who looks like you. So I was either told I was too ugly, I was too fat, I was too dark. And that's still Asia's probably still one of the few places where they're not woke yet.
Mhm.
So, so I got that taste that. So what ended up happening was because of the way they judge people, and it's really ridiculous because you're not there to be a model, you're there to be a teacher. But what they want is they want those young, pretty white women, just to be honest with you, from 28 to 35. They want pretty young girls that are going to sit there and they can take a picture. Look, we got a nice young white girl here at our school. So because I couldn't do well in the job thing, I ended up having to go to live in the jungle of Thailand, the countryside. So I found this woman, she finally found me a job. And the place that I lived in was called Wang Nanyang, Thailand. And this was literally in the countryside jungle. I mean, there was rice farmers, there was just nothing going on. Dirt roads. The apartment that I stayed in, we had to put water down the toilet. You would go walking home and the ants would attack you and bite your neck. I mean,
Ooh.
there was nothing going on. And it was brutal, man. Like living out there, I I really learned how rough it is in this world in terms of traveling because the people there treated me like garbage, man. Like every single time I would go to the store, they would look at me like this. They would literally stop what they were doing and just watch me. And I remember one time I was inside a store, like a little convenience store, and I was in there with my other teachers, and this guy literally put his stuff down and just stared at me like this for like 3 minutes. His face was just like he was looking at me like I was an alien, like he had never seen anyone like me before.
Yeah.
And even my coworkers like, what the F is wrong with this dude? Like he's literally looking like, hello, what's
Yeah.
wrong? Like, are you there? Like the people just, it they had never seen because I'm pretty tall, I'm like 6'1", and they never seen some big, tall, fat Mexican before. Like they didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And so when I was there, the, the teacher aide that I had in class, she was she did not like me. Um, and she made my life miserable the whole time I was teaching there. She tried to undermine me, not she would, kids wouldn't listen to me. And I only lasted about a month, man, because it was just so hard to work there. The culture differences, it just I couldn't do it. So I ended up having to move back to Bangkok. And then I went to another school and it was a little bit better because at least the toilets were down, there was at least air conditioning. Uh, there was at least some semblance of organization, but the Thai schools are so corrupt and they're a joke because in Thailand, you can't even give the students bad grades. Everyone has to pass. And in Thailand, um, you can't say it's just like China. You can't say anything bad about the government. You can't talk about the king. If you say anything bad about the king in Thailand, they'll put you in jail for 15 years. And Thai people, not all of them are bad, but they're very nationalistic. They're very why are you in my country? It's not like what people say, people are like, oh, the people were so nice to me and stuff. No, no, you live there, it's not the same as visiting a country. When you live there, you learn how people really are. And so like I learned the hard lessons of dealing with just living in a different country, living around people that don't look like you. And it was rough, man, because they there was no, hey, hi, nice to meet you. Thank you for being in my country. It was always, why are you here? Get out. I just want your money, but I don't want you in my country. I would walk down the street and old ladies would literally like this, look at me like, what are you doing in my country? Like that's the look they give in your face.
Yeah.
Like I can think of 5 people when I lived there for 2 years that actually were nice to me, that were cool with me. I mean, I would be in the 7-Eleven, man, and an old man would come up to me and he would start touching my stomach.
Mm.
I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like,
Like the Buddha or something.
yeah, like I'm a Buddha. Yeah, it's like they
For
don't
good luck.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't understand. Like you're not supposed to do that. And it's just, and the thing about Thailand is when you live there, if you do something to a Thai person, doesn't matter if it's your fault or not, 9 other Thai people will get involved and they'll kick your ass, man. They will put you in jail. You go on YouTube and put Thai fighting, it doesn't matter if it's your fault or not. If you're a foreigner, they all join in and beat you up. So Thailand is a great country to party in, have fun in, but living there, I would never do it again.
Well, I know that it has a reputation for also sex tourism. A lot of people from England and from the States
Yep.
go there because they can both have sex with minor girls or boys, or girl boys or whatever
Yeah,
they
lady
call it.
boys. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's that right there. I mean, that's been going on since the Vietnam War. Um, and also the government gets a cut of those profits, and that's part of why it's still going. And the thing about Thai people
Do you
don't
think maybe
understand.
that's why they hate foreigners so much, or?
Yeah, oh yeah, because the police officers, the police station, the government officials control all of that. They they all get a piece of that, and a lot of people in Thailand say, "Oh, we don't want you." They call us farangs in Thailand, farangs. We don't want you farangs in here, doing all this stuff. I agree, but you guys sell it though.
Mhm,
You're not closing down those bars.
mhm.
So yeah, the people that go there do that stuff, okay, they're wrong, but you guys don't have a problem with the money. It works both ways. So
Yeah.
it's like every country that I've been to, everything is always the foreigner's fault, but they don't do anything about it in their own people though either. It's always blaming the foreigners, you know what I mean? So I don't want to make it seem like Thailand's like the worst place ever. It's a great place to have fun and party. It's a great place to be stupid and young. But living there is a different story. And I think, do you hear any background noise? Here. Okay, because when I speak, I can hear somebody else speaking. I can hear my
Yeah,
voice.
I'm not sure. It could be. I have one of those drink wells for my
Oh, okay.
cat, so you might hear that in the
The
background. I don't
echo.
know.
Yeah, the echo.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, but yeah, so I think I told you a story about how what happened to me out there a little bit. So I was living there for 2 years, and I had a really nice girlfriend. We're not together anymore, but she was nice to me. She was a very sweet girl, and she was one of the good people. I have no animosity towards her. But when I was living out there, by the end of my time there, I was already fed up. I couldn't take it anymore, and so this was mm, February and March of 2017. I was getting ready to go back home, and there's a place in Thailand called Khasan Road, and it's like one of the main tourist areas in Bangkok for all the backpackers, and it's just real cheap, just hang out there, $8 a night, hotel, whatever, hostel. So by that point, I had learned all the scams, I had learned all the tricks, and in Thailand they have something called tuk-tuks. Those little Jeeps, they're open, they're real cute to drive, but the taxi drivers, the tuk-tuk drivers, when somebody comes to Thailand, they'll tell them some outrageous price. They don't know any better. So there was an Italian couple, they were sitting there getting ready to get in a tuk-tuk, and I already knew that I probably shouldn't have done this, but I was just so ready to leave and angry because I was bitter at the time. I was angry about how I got treated. I went up to the Italian tourist and I said, "It's a scam. Get into that tuk-tuk." The guy was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I walked away.
Mhm.
5 seconds, I started walking. All of a sudden, this rock went right past my ear,
Oof.
and it missed me like this much. And I saw the rock, bam, 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 it skipped. The tuk-tuk driver trying to hit my head, and because he realized what I had said to them, and I looked back, and it was just a bunch of group of guys, and I was like, I better get the heck out of here. So I started walking as fast as I could, and man, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was scared, man, because I'm like, I gotta be here for another 5 more days, because I already had left my apartment in Bangkok, and I was so ready to go that I wanted to be in the tourist area and just get on an airplane and get out of there because I was done. And I was staying in this little hostel, and I called my girlfriend. I was like, "What happened?" She's like, "Oh my God." She's like, "You cannot leave. Like they might have a gun." She's like, "Do not go back outside. Not go walking back over there. Like they're gonna do something to you." So for the next 5 days that I was there, I just literally was in my room. I will come outside, hide in a 7-Eleven, and go right back to my
Oof.
because in Thailand, the taxi drivers, the tuk drivers, those guys will kill you, man. I mean, they kill. I know a story where they killed another American. They have machetes in their back in their trunk. Say something to them, they don't like you. They'll just
Take you out. Yeah.
yeah. Those guys are real, real immature. They're real angry. I remember one time I was in a taxi in Bangkok, and there's actually two airports in Thailand, and I was trying to explain to him, my apartment was close to one of the other airports. He got mad at me, and I saw in Thai people, they're in Asian culture, they're taught never to lose face. Always maintain your composure, always look everything under control. And he looked at me, he got angry, he was like this. And in Thailand, if a Thai person shows you emotion, that means they're angry. And if a Thai person gets angry, watch out. So, I don't want to disparage all Thai people. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just saying you have to understand if you live out there, if you look a certain way, it's not like the United States. It's not like in Europe where you have discriminatory, where they protect you. Racism is alive and real in Asia. And when I lived in Asia, I realized that the people who complain about racism in the United States, yes, there are racist people in the country, but it's nowhere to the level as it is in Asia. I mean, they literally will say to you, "You're ugly, you're dark, you're fat, we ain't hiring you." It's like
Mm,
there's no,
yeah, that's
you
crazy. Yeah.
if you say that, you're
Everybody,
not.
I think racism here is a distraction. It was a big deal, yes, years ago. And yes, it still exists, but they act like it's completely systematic and that it's impossible to move up in our culture. But I mean, there are millionaires, billionaires that have that are have different colors. Um, I sometimes I'm thinking in Spanish, and in Spanish you'll say, gente de color, but that actually, when Mexicans say it, at least some of my Mexican friends, they're not referring to themselves. Like I read screenplays, and I was writing a screenplay with a buddy about the drug trade going from Mexico up through the East Coast and then up to Canada.
Mm,
And he said he wanted una persona de color, to write part of it, And I said, well, yeah, I think we can probably get some, Mexicans or some Puerto Ricans. And he said, no, gente de color. I'm like, okay, so you mean black people? Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's real. I'm not bitter about it anymore now. I was when I left, I was upset for about 2 years, man. It took me a while to get over it. And now I look back on it now, and I think of it more in a good term. Like I realized that it was what it was. I'm thankful to God that I had the experience. It made me actually appreciate the United States more, and because it made me realize what I thought of it was like, this is what it must have been like to be a black person in the 1950s, a little bit like you just every day people are just out to get you. And like I said, not all Thai people are bad. But when that guy threw that rock, man, past me and it almost hit me, I don't want to ever go back at this point. Like that was enough. That told me everything I need to know about these kind of people, the mindset. And it's just like if you're gonna kill me over something like that, and I know that it's an impoverished country, it's like I don't need to be here. I don't need to spend money here anymore. They would have hit me in the head. I probably would have fell. Or maybe they would have sat there, laughed at me. Who knows what kind of injury I would have had. Somebody eventually would have called 911, but it's like they would have just stared at me for a while. Oh, look at this dude on the ground bleeding. Like
Yeah.
why would I put myself back into that situation, living kind of place like that? Oh.
So does this song "One Night in Bangkok" trigger you?
Yeah, exactly. You know what? That's funny you say that because among expats in Bangkok, they'll say a man will never be the same after a weekend in Bangkok. One night in Bangkok will change your life forever, and it's absolutely true because it is a crazy place, and you got to be careful, man. I mean, you go walking down the street, and they have you're talking about the red light district. You walk down there, they have foreigners there, American guys, British guys working for the police. The guy will come up to you and say, "Hey, man, you got any cocaine?" They're trying to get you in trouble. I mean, it's just like it's not as crazy as Cambodia is, but Bangkok is it's not what people think it is. People think it's like, oh, they like me so much. Like, no, they don't. They're talking about you in Thai when you're walking down the street. Like, it's just the tourism industry and the YouTube industry where they present countries in a certain light. They're not being honest. They're only giving you a certain perception. The world is a night is a dark, evil place. There's a lot of good people, but there's also a lot of bad people. And you have to realize that when you live in these countries, and you have to understand the rules, the laws, and the culture. And when you step into another country, you're on their turf. You have to understand it's not a joke there. And when you do that, you're not thinking about that. You're being young, you're naive, you're trying to have fun. So
Yeah, a lot of Americans don't understand. We're used to having our rights, and I mean, I think I told you I was in a riot in Jerusalem back in the 80s, and I was there. There was a protest going on outside our dorm, and me and a buddy of mine just walked out, and he was even just in his pajama bottoms and socks, and there was a big protest going on, and a guy speaking who was actually a famous guy, Mayor Kahana, who wanted to kick all the Arabs out of Israel. and he was a member of parliament, so he was kind of protected, so he couldn't really be arrested, but they banned him from speaking at most places because he used to go into Arab villages and basically provoke them into a riot by saying terrible things to them, like shalom Jews and dogs, stuff like that. But we ended up in a riot, and it was all staged. I mean, it was created on purpose, and the border police rounded us up where we were. They first came on horseback and were hitting everybody in the head with their nightsticks, and then they kind of rounded us into this area where we were kind of fenced in. And my buddy was still just like, I'm an American, I know my rights. And I'm like, we don't have any rights right now, dude. My suggestion is to run, which is what I did. And I still got hit, but I didn't feel it because of the adrenaline. Yeah, but I got hit here, and I think on the head too. But I just ran into my dorm, up 3 flights of stairs, down the hall, and into my room, and slammed the door.
Yeah.
And then all these girls came, and they said, we saw what happened. Oh my God, are you okay? We saw how they beat you. And I'm like, no, they didn't get me. And they said, no, check it. And so I lifted my shirt up, and the bruises were already starting to come up. Man. And I was like, oh wow. And they got my leg. So, I had no idea. I can understand now how people get shot or, die from car accidents, and they think they're fine, because you don't feel anything. And then when the adrenaline comes down, then you're like, oh, they messed me up.
Yeah. That's when reality hits you, right? It's like you start to realize what the world really is.
Yeah. So, are you planning on doing more travel soon, or within the next year or so? Or
yeah, actually, just real quick, I can tell you my story in Israel too. I have
one
too.
Yeah, tell me.
I went there right after I left Thailand, and I moved out. I actually flew to London, and then I went to Jerusalem. And this is an example of my own stupidity. I didn't understand how serious they are about security out there. So I went there, and I had a great, wonderful time. It's an amazing place. When I'm getting ready to go to the airport and go back, man, they thought I was a terrorist. So I was in the airport. I got interviewed. They wanted to see my bank account. Then I got through that interview. I go to the next line, security, and guess what happens, man? My laptop starts beeping in the security line. Beep, 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 beep. They think I got a bomb. And for the next 2 hours, they take my passport, throw all my stuff. They take my laptop, and they actually keep 2 weeks and take it apart because they think I'm a terrorist. They think there's something in there. I almost missed my flight back to England. Dude, I was literally praying for 2 hours. Lord, please just give me shit. It was so intense, dude. Like when you think you're about to go to jail in the Middle East, dude, it's like you just they don't play, man. They do not play out there.
Yeah. I went to visit my brother 2 years after I went, and because he was on the same program as me. And when I got off the plane, it was one of those planes where you don't get off into the airport, you get off on the tarmac, and then you walk to the airport. When I got off, an agent came up to me first thing, and he had those, aviator glasses on. I could tell right away he was, Israeli intelligence, and he said, hey, can I talk to you? And I said, yeah. And he's like, what's your purpose here? What are you doing here? And I told him I'm visiting my brother, and he said, well, where is he? But I had all the answers right away. And he asked me how long I was going to be. And he said, okay, but yeah, they don't play. That was back in the 80s too, because he's only 2 years younger than me. And I had a similar experience in Dover, coming into England on the way back from Israel, because I had been in Israel for a year, and then I was born in Spain, and I got an Irish last name. So those are all terrorist spots, Wow. So they were like, what, tell us why, explain this to me, why, what your story is. So I told them my whole life story like twice, and they were still just like looking at me like,
are you sure?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, they're just protecting their country, so I understand. But it's just when you're in that moment, you're freaking out. You're like, oh my god, locked. Have you ever seen that show, Locked Up Abroad?
Yes, yeah.
That's just ridiculous. Yeah. After I did that, and it took me a while to get over some things. I decided to move to Colombia after that. and I went there. Yeah.
to have some calm and peace.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was crazy, man. I just that's how much I was into travel. I wanted that. I liked I didn't like some of the best stuff, but I enjoyed that feeling. I enjoyed that intense stuff. And so I went out there and um I lived out there a couple of different times. I lived out there in 17 and 19 and 22. Colombia is it's not what it was before. It's not like from the Medellin cartel, but and the government has done a good job in terms of fighting what it was. But the problem in Colombia is that the Pablo Escobar mindset is not left Medellin. So when you're there, everyone's trying to hustle you. And Colombia has a reputation of beautiful women, which is absolutely true. Women are absolutely gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. They're stunning. But when you have women that are beautiful and you have a Pablo Escobar mindset, they're trying to always get money from you. They're always trying to ask you for stuff. And so their culture is just about vanity. And so when you go down there, a lot of guys, what they ends up happening to them is they go there and there's a lot of lonely men in the United States right now. There's a lot of men who are not married, who are not, they don't have any interaction with women. They're on there playing video games. They go to Colombia for the first time. And this is the most attention they've ever gotten for women. And they don't know how to handle it. So when I was living down there, I realized that the women would use their beauty, get stuff from you. So you have a woman that's a 9 or a 10 and she's talking to you, you're gonna give her money, you want that attention. And so a lot of men end up murdered out there because they get drugged by the girls. So a girl will put on a show, she'll act like she like you. And one of my buddies got killed out there actually. Um, he actually was not like a new traveler. He had lived in Brazil. He was a real good looking guy. He was a smart guy, but he put his guard down. They have a saying in Colombia, no dar papayo. Don't ever put your guard down because somebody will take advantage of you. And as soon as you put your guard down in Colombia, you're gonna get hit. He was at a club actually in Cali, Colombia, and he was partying and some girl put something in his drink. He just looked away, wasn't paying attention for a second. The drug kicked in. It's called the devil's breath, sociopine. It kicked in. His heart stopped. He had a heart attack right there in Cali. He dropped dead on the street. And they don't know who did it. And last year, actually in December, November, December last year, I think 25 Americans got murdered out there. They got drugged. And guys are actually getting drugged every week, but they're too embarrassed to say. So this is going on. Like right now, it's December here. I guarantee you there's guys getting drugged every weekend right now there because in Colombian culture, you want to have a lot of gifts and you want to present yourself as having money. So the women, like I said, they'll go on Tinder and they'll just set guys up. They'll set them up to get drugged, send them up to get hurt, anything. I mean, so Colombia is a beautiful country, amazing animals, just amazing nature. But if you go down there, just like with Thailand, just like in Mexico, you got to know what you're getting yourself into. And I'm very fortunate that nothing happened to me down there. But like I said, I lost one of my buddies. Another buddy of mine got robbed, knife. Everyone that I know that has ever lived in Colombia has been robbed or taken advantage of. It's not a country for new travelers.
Yeah, from what I understand, there are a lot of crypto millionaires, who they got a lot of money through cryptocurrency, and they go to Colombia or they go to Brazil and different countries. But Americans, we have this arrogance where we think we can go anywhere and nothing's going to happen to us.
That's true.
But there was a guy just maybe 5-10 years ago who had made, I think he was a tech guy actually, but he had made like millions, and he decided to travel around the world. And he was down, I think, in Argentina. He had motorcycled all the way down through Latin America, and he had messaged, or I think he had talked to his parents and told them that he was kind of worried because it seemed like there were people following him, and then he disappeared. And I think his body did turn up later, but I mean, even every place is great, especially if you have money, but if you're careless and you still just think you can motorcycle around a country and nothing's going to happen to you, and you're not armed, or anything, you know, if you have money like that, maybe hire security or do something, because otherwise, you know, and that's what the rich people down there do. They have security guards that are usually armed and take care of them, because you have to. Like, from what I understand, in Brazil, you know, the rich people all have like armed guards at their houses, you know.
Yeah, I mean it's true. I mean, one of my buddies, he goes down there all the time, and he was ex-military, so he's a pretty smart guy. He got robbed in Colombia too, actually. But when he's been in Brazil, he's been real careful. And I mean, it just when guys, guys, we think of our little heads, not our big heads, and that's what gets us in trouble, you know. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the women are beautiful. I mean, they are, but you got to be like, if this girl wouldn't talk to me in the USA, why is she talking to me out here? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also big guys like you, or, you know, guys that are buffed out too and can fight, are like, well, I can take care of myself. But you can take care of yourself against one guy, but not against
Yes.
five guys, or not against
No.
the guy with the gun, you know.
No. I mean, that's what happened last year. There was an Asian guy, who was from Minnesota. He got murdered out there. He was actually real popular from his community. He went out there, he started messing with a girl, and she was real pretty. What ended up happening was that she set him up for 3 months, man. She pretended to like him. She was sending him money, and he went down there, and they were at this restaurant, and she got her guy friends to kidnap him. They stabbed him in the stomach and then threw him off a cliff, man.
Oof.
It was
Yeah.
terrible, man. I mean, I still I would like to go back to Colombia one more time at least, but you get to that point where you're just tired of looking over your shoulder all the time. I mean, I like being there, it's fun, but it's just you just get tired of always feeling like who's next? What's this person? What's their angle? It's just, and as much as I love to travel and I still do it, I've been to 20 countries, I've done all this stuff, I have more crazier stories, but you also get to that point where you're like, I don't want to have to come home in a body bag and my parents have to bury me either. At some point you got to be wise and smart, and I'm still doing it, but I'm not slowing down to the point where I'm like done. But if Mexico gets to the point of no return and things keep going the way they are, like, I'm almost at that point where I'll just travel in the States, because you just get tired of always having to look over your shoulder all the time. You get tired of always worrying who's gonna hurt me, who's gonna do something to me. And when you travel like that, it really makes you understand how blessed you are to live in the USA, but also the real world is very ugly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, are you optimistic that things are going to get better around the world with the new administration coming in, and seems like there's a shift in politics around the world a little bit, you know, with Milei and with Bukele and with Trump, and there's some other countries where they're kind of moving more to the right or center right, and stopping a lot of the lawlessness, because there's been lawlessness. Like, they just finally changed the laws in California, where now, you know, I mean, for years it's been, if you steal less than $950, it's a misdemeanor, and they just give you a ticket. And, you know, we've lost so many chains, you know, and I mean, retail was already kind of dying because of Amazon and stuff like that. But then on top of that, if people are going in and taking, you know, all their luxury items or stealing stuff, and you know, if you're a security guard or you work there and you try to stop them, you're going to get fired and you might get charged with a crime too. So it seems like that's changed now, because they've made it so that now it's a crime, and I think if you get caught 3 times stealing, I'm not sure what amount, but it ends up going from a misdemeanor to a felony
Like how it
too.
should be.
Yeah. Because I mean, I think people are tired of it, and even though, you know, you can be at a store or whatever, and you see somebody just throwing stuff in their bag and walking out, and, you know, you think, well, it's not my business, this is not my store. But at the same time, it's not fair that you're paying for everything that you have to buy, and they just walk out, you know. And ultimately stores budget for that, but there's only so much loss that you can allow for, you know. There's always some, but it's gotten
Yeah.
crazy, and it makes it impossible to do business, and people don't want to. You know, if you go into, you know, drugstores in the big city, you know, in LA, downtown LA, a lot of them are closing down. All the CVS and Thrifty and all of them, Walgreens, they started out by just locking everything up, where, you know, it's like if you want to buy a deodorant, you have to have them unlock it from behind the counter. It's like, what the hell, you know, you're not selling gold bullion, you're selling, you know. But yeah, I'm hoping that maybe the lawlessness is going to stop a little bit, because it's, you know, there have been a lot of street takeovers in different cities, which has become a real popular thing, and it looks wild. It looks like it must be fun for the young people that are there, but somebody usually gets hurt because they'll like spin out, and often they knock into people in the crowd and stuff. I wonder what's going to happen. I mean, they've even taken over, like I think in San Francisco, they took over the bridge at one point, you know?
Wow. I
Yeah.
didn't even know that. Wow. I think my honest answer for you is yes and no. One of the things my dad said to me, he said, it's great that Trump's got elected, but none of this will matter if there's not a spiritual change in our culture. Um, if Trump's elected now, things will get better. But if our country does not go back to the foundation of Christianity and respecting God's law and obeying God's law and treating people with respect, if there's no change, then as soon as the Democrat gets back in office, things will go right back to how they are before. So I'm cautiously optimistic that things will get better, but it's a hard issue. And people have to want to change and want to do better. And our culture, even if you don't believe in Christianity, that's fine, but there has to be some sort of moral stronghold in our culture, and we're losing that every day. And if we don't get that back, we see the consequence of it now, and we see what happens in other countries when you lose that. Because once there's no more morals, the corruption comes in, and then we have a situation like Mexico. And we're seeing that in our country now, where you have people in power who are so corrupt now, they don't think they have the answer to God. They can just do whatever they want. It destroys the country's foundations, and people don't trust the institutions anymore in our culture. And once that's lost, you know, anything can happen. So I'm cautiously optimistic, and I really think a lot of it falls on men in the church and people being leaders and people being courageous like Trump, people being willing to stand up for what's right. It does give me some hope what's happening in California, but it's going to take more than that, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think also the popular culture has changed, because for a long time, it was really almost seen as, you know, blasphemy to walk around with an American flag on your clothes anywhere, on your hat. You know, that basically meant you were a MAGA or whatever, or you know, even a cross or anything religious. And it's because there's been this movement against religion for a long time, and it's gotten more and more popular. It was already big in Europe going back longer than here, I think. I mean, there have always been atheists here, and there have always been atheists all over the world, but for a long time they were just tolerated, and they kind of became a protected class. But religious people, it seemed like, were really persecuted, particularly during the COVID lockdowns. You know, they started monitoring churches, and they were arresting people for going to church, while people were able to go to bars and have drinks and stuff like that, you know. So they were, and that was the FBI really going after, you know, religious people. And I think that's kind of shifted in the other direction now. A lot more people, and a lot more prominent people, stars, seem to be coming out and be saying they're religious, or saying they're right wing or whatever, you know, which you could never do, because in Hollywood, you know, that's a death sentence. You say I'm for Trump, or I'm a Christian or whatever. I'm not a Christian. I was raised Jewish. My parents converted to Judaism when I was a baby, and I was bar mitzvahed at 13, and I went to Israel right out of high school. I'm not religious now, but I believe in a higher power, and I believe in right and wrong. And, you know, I took criminology in college, and from a cop, and he basically said, you know, all of America's laws, this was back in the 80s, and this has changed now, but he said all of America's laws are basically based on the 10 Commandments. Don't lie, don't steal, don't kill, you know. And but now there are all these sub laws, you know, that, you know, hate crimes and things like that. Basically, a hate crime is already a crime. If you're violent towards someone, that's a crime. But if you're violent towards someone and it's because of their race, then you get a double charge. If you're violent because of whatever, it's an extra charge, which I think laws should just be the crime. It's like the crime is the crime. Either way, the result is the same. If somebody shoots you because you're Mexican, or they just shoot you for whatever reason, they're still shooting you. It's still murder, and they should be charged with murder. But I don't know. That's why there's so many laws on the books that it gets confusing now. It's even, I think, confusing for the judges to know how to sentence these things.
Like our tax laws.
Yeah, exactly. They make it really complicated when it should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think you're right though. I think there has been change. I heard someone say this. They said that we had to go through what we did the last 4 years in order for us to get to where we are now. And I think we had to suffer under Biden. We had to suffer the everything that happened, the economy, because suffering produces character, and we finally came to the light and realized just how deep the corruption is in our government, but also that we needed Trump again. We needed somebody like him. And I understand everybody likes him, and that's fine, but we have to have somebody who's tough inside the White House. We can't have somebody who can't finish their sentence. And I think that what happened changed people's opinion of him.
Yeah, and I think also, and I said this right after the election, that if the economy was going well, Kamala might have won, but it wasn't, and everybody tried to spin it. In fact, that's the thing, they try to tell you to deny what you're seeing with your own eyes. It's like, no, the economy is doing great. And it's like, well, I go to the grocery store and I see how much prices were before and how much they are now, and that my dollar isn't buying as much. I had one friend of mine tell me, because she thought Kamala was going to win, and she said, well, there's more millionaires today than ever in the United States. And I said, yeah, but if you had $1 million 5 years ago, it's only worth $560,000 now in terms of buying power. So really, being a millionaire doesn't mean as much if $1 million doesn't buy you what it used to be able to buy you.
Yeah, the gaslighting by the media was just amazing. The way they would be like, "Oh no! I know you used to pay $16 for tamales, and now it's $30, but it's no big deal. Hey, come on, everything's okay."
Yeah, and I had people on, friends of mine on Facebook would post, I'm willing to pay more for gas to have a good president. I'm like, but it's not. If you have a good president, then gas shouldn't be that much. Everything shouldn't be that much. We're the richest country in the world, so they always say, like, if America has a cough, the rest of the world has a cold.
That's true.
So yeah, that's why I'm thinking that hopefully the economy is going to get better. But there's so much work to be done that I don't know if they can do it. We owe so much money, and it's insane.
Don't even get started on that. And the thing that irritates me is, I mean, this, you're informed, but there's still millions of Americans don't even know it, and they're not even paying attention.
Yeah. There's not. I mean, we don't have enough money to be able to pay off our debt within like 4 generations, which is maybe why we keep pushing more wars and everything, because it's a way to distract and just throw more money in it. But it's not even tax money, it's debt, because it's money that we're just printing. I was trying to kind of explain to another friend of mine who said, because I said, well, the dollar's going down. He said that things are costing more because executives from corporations are greedy, so they're just raising the prices. But basically, they're raising the prices because the economy and inflation altogether is, and they are greedy. They do have a markup, but like restaurants, for example, have like a very thin margin of profit, which is why they go under so easily when things go south.
And I mean, we only can get rid of this debt either by inflation or taxing our way out of it, or they're gonna have to default, and they're gonna have to figure out something. And I'm real curious to see what Trump's gonna do about that. Because I mean, if he doesn't deal with it, then nobody else is gonna deal with it, and then we're gonna either have a depression or something's gonna happen crazy, because it's not sustainable at this point.
Yeah. Do you think that the wars are going to end? The war in Ukraine and Gaza, and
I think so. I feel confident that I think Putin wants it finished, and I think he knows that Trump can do it. The Middle East, I think, is a little bit more trickier, but I think Iran knows that Trump isn't to mess with him, so I'm pretty confident about that. The one thing that I'm real curious about is what Trump's going to do with Mexico. I think they'll eventually bend to our way, but I think it's gonna be it's gonna be tough. And I really hope that Trump doesn't. At first, I was for it, but I'm against it now. I hope he doesn't send any military into Mexico because if he does that, that's gonna be a mess. That's not gonna work. It'll just turn into another Iraq situation. Um,
Yeah,
so
I can't see him doing that. Just because of the optics too, the way it'll look to the world. The world already sees us kind of as the bully that goes
yeah,
around, the world's policeman, and we go around and we tell people
it's
what to
true.
do. If we don't like somebody who was voted into power, then we'll
CIA gets
basically,
involved.
yeah, exactly. Like in Syria, I mean, you can
Yeah,
say what you want about Assad. Yeah, he was terrible. So was Saddam Hussein. But look at Iraq now. Saddam
yeah,
Hussein, at least, I mean, these are violent countries, tribalistic countries, and these leaders that lead with an iron fist. Yeah, they're terrible and they do a lot of awful stuff, but they also keep everybody in fear,
yeah,
which is kind of needed. And once the fear is gone, then people start taking each other
yeah.
out, and it's just a free for all. And Iraq is destroyed. Libya is destroyed. Libya wanted to move away from the petrodollar. They wanted to have a system where countries in Africa would be able to have their own monetary system. They had the highest level of literacy in the Middle East,
Hmm.
and now it's a mess. It's
Yeah,
just
it's a failed
destroyed.
state. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
So
I mean, I feel so terrible for those Christian women out there in Syria, the stuff that those men are gonna do. It's just like what's going on in Afghanistan now, and it's just unconscionable. It's like you said, somebody like Assad, he's a terrible person, he's a mass murderer, but it's like you got to choose your poison, and it's bad, man.
yeah, and I mean, we need to focus on our own problems. I think we have a lot of problems right here in our own country. We don't need to be meddling in other people's business, as long as they're not. There's always this fear that they want to take us over, but I can't see any of these countries doing that. Even Russia. I mean, Russia has the GDP of Italy, so they're not
Mm,
even. They put a lot, but they have a strong military
yeah,
and they have nukes. So
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I
but
think China is the only one that could really, challenge us still. I have a lot of questions still about China. I dealt with Chinese people and I've been there before, and China, they're not honest about a lot of things. So I don't think they're telling us a lot about their economy. But when I deal with Chinese people still at my job, and all of them say to me private, things aren't good here. The economy's bad. It's hard to keep money, hard to have a job. A lot of those people have to work 6 days a week just to get by. So I'm concerned about that. But I think what Abraham Lincoln said about the United States is true. If we fall, it'll be because of us and our internal issues more.
yeah. I think I'm I'm getting more and more to want just small government, because
Mm,
it seems like bureaucracy gets in the way of so much. We've had so many programs in California, California is a rich state. It's one of the it could be its own country. It has
yeah,
all of the resources, but we blow money on things that don't go anywhere. We have the high speed rail, which has been years and years and hasn't really gone anywhere, and we've thrown billions at it. We've thrown billions at the homeless problem. That hasn't gone anywhere. It's gotten worse. Um, and I think that so much of that is just bureaucracy. It's like democracy is good, but when everybody has a say, then there's going to be bad ideas thrown in the mix
it's
too.
true.
And you can't make everybody happy. You have to
Yeah.
ultimately make a decision. Be like, no, we're going for this. No, you can't, because no, we can and we will, because um, otherwise we're not going to progress.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's the thing that people always forget is our country is a constitutional republic, not,
mhm.
really technically a democracy. And yeah, you're right. If we have to accept the bad ideas, then we can always have the good ideas. And my hope is that we learn from what happened with Biden that Trump doesn't has a good 4 years. There's at least some semblance, whether it's Jewish or Christianity, any sort of moral foundation of the Bible. And my hope is that if Trump does a good job, JD Vance will get in. That's what I hope happens. Um, it's gonna be, we'll see what happens. It's gonna be tough. The Democrats are gonna come back and they're gonna find a way to get back to power. Eventually, they'll win again. Eventually, but I'm just hoping that Americans will remember what happened. I think maybe it could be like a Jimmy Carter situation where it was so bad back then that there was a Republican office of 12 years. And not that I think the Republicans are the answer, not that I think they're necessarily better, but we just need somebody who's MAGA American first. I don't agree with everything with American first, but I want somebody who puts our country ahead of other countries, like you said. And we need that now, because if this continues, we're not going to make it as a country, honestly.
Yeah, and I think also we need to be open to third parties. This election showed more than even the past elections how we push out third parties, and the Democrats had lawsuits against the Green Party in certain states to push them off the ballot, against Donald Trump to push him off the ballot in certain states as well, which is crazy because that's completely against what they're supposed to be about. Everybody should be able to vote on their party, and they can't. Yeah, they pushed them out of the debates. There should have been, multiple parties, because two parties don't really represent all these millions of people in this country, and there are a lot of interests that really need to be heard. I think one of the good things one of the smart things that Trump and RFK did was to go meet with the Libertarian Party and promise they would have at least one Libertarian in their cabinet, and they're just looking to, this whole teams thing is really messing things up, because it shouldn't be about, okay, well, oh, you're with them, so you're not with me.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, if somebody has a good idea, it doesn't matter. A good idea is a good idea. It doesn't matter who it comes from.
Yeah.
And you can say, well, look at the source, is it a good idea or is it not a good idea? But people like to, especially in this country, we like to focus on people, on the leader, and be like, that's our savior, that's our answer, and that he's going to be the next or JFK or whatever. Which JFK, he was not popular while he was alive. He got popular after he died, really. But they like to either idolize or demonize people, and
there's no middle. It's always the extremes.
Yeah, and if you look in somebody's past, especially if they've lived for a while, and you can't even be eligible to be president until you're 35. If you've lived for a while, then you can always, if you dig into somebody's past, you can always find somebody who says they're an asshole, who says, oh yeah,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I was at a party with him and he tried to pick up on my girlfriend.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I mean, there's, a lot of people forget that, JFK, excuse me for saying this, was deflowering women in his bed.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a womanizer. He was just like Trump. He was no different. Who was the other guy? Lyndon Johnson. They said that he used to staff that he didn't like. He would have them meet him when he was using the bathroom.
Yeah, yeah. That's a power move right there. Yeah. Just be like, oh no, just tell me, give me the report. While you're on the pot.
Yeah. I mean, what was the other guy? FDR, wasn't he with somebody? Didn't his daughter help him had him up with a woman or something? I don't know. Like,
possibly, I don't know. There's always been rumors that FDR's wife was a lesbian, Eleanor Roosevelt. Yeah, I mean, these are all like ultra rich people too, and ultra rich people live their lives very differently, because back then, they're pecadillos, as they say, which comes from Spanish pecadillo, pecado, sins, but little sins didn't come out to the public because they knew that back then, if you were a newspaper guy and you tried to report on a powerful guy having an affair or getting a girl pregnant outside of marriage or whatever, your life could be destroyed and you could even be killed. I mean, we love to think, oh, in this country that stuff doesn't happen. It happened here. I mean, corruption is everywhere. And I mean, New York had Tammany Hall. There's always been payola. There's always been people that have gotten into power through mafia, basically mafia of some kind or another, and it doesn't have to be Italian mafia. There's the Mexican mafia. The Irish mafia ran New York before the Italians ever came in.
I mean, look at Kamala Harris. How did she get in power?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know,
that was, I think, I mean, of course there was we're sleeping with Willie Brown and all of that, but and they're saying that she didn't even really try any cases when she was attorney general. I don't know. I'd be more interested to hear about that. She talked about how she tried, but basically, if you're attorney general, if you're the boss, so if your lawyers all fight these cases, then you still can take the credit for that, because you're the boss. But I mean, it would blow my mind to see her win a case in the courtroom when she can't even put two sentences together. It's like, well, okay, it's time for you to present your case. I grew up in a middle class family. It's like
the duality.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, no, but how do you prove that this person's innocent or guilty? It's like, yeah. I mean, she was a prosecutor, so, but I think a lot of these people are kind of put into power by higher up people with a lot of money. They find somebody, and especially if you're good looking and you're charming, that's all it takes.
That's all it takes.
Yeah, because I mean, it's all about getting people to donate money, and that's how you get into power anyway. So rich people pick things out, and then you look at cases like Epstein or P. Diddy, which is also, it sounds like, connected to the government.
Yeah, that's scary what's going on there.
Yeah, and basically you can get people to do what you want by blackmailing them too.
Sexual blackmail. I mean, I think my dad told me one time, he said in Mexico, if the government wants to kill you, or the cartel will do it. In the United States, they'll just throw you in jail. And I mean, that's what they did to Trump. I mean, they literally were about, this man was gonna be done for the rest of his life. Not but the grace of God, we haven't Kamala Harris about to be the president. And somebody like Nancy Pelosi, who's literally stolen from us, robbed us, this woman should be retired now. She just broke her hip. She's what, 84, 85 years old. She's an evil, corrupt woman. I have nothing good to say about her. I hope she finds Jesus before she dies. But somebody like that, how can she be in power for this long? And how is she not in jail?
Yeah. And I always say, but why, if you have that much money, if I had that much money, I would just retire and be living on an island and living it up, or traveling the world, but they just want the power. It's like the power is more important to them than the money.
They live for that. I mean, I think she wakes up every morning trying to figure out, how can I keep my power? What do I have to do to make sure I don't lose it? I mean, like Dianne Feinstein, right? Like, she died while she was in office. I mean, this is ridiculous. The forefathers never intended for it to be this way.
Yeah. It's a dark time, but I think it's a time that if we come out of it, some people are saying it's like the fall of the Roman Empire. This is the last, because, when the Roman Empire fell, it was because of mismanagement, bad decisions, but it was also because of arrogance, because we thought we were, so great that we could never fall. It's like I think Adam Carolla was saying this the other day, it's like a hot chick who's used to going into a bar and every guy wants to talk to her, and she can just shit on everybody, and she never pays for her own drinks. Somebody else always pays for everything. And then she turns 60 and she goes in the bar and she has to deal with people not being interested in her anymore, and adjusting her expectations and realizing you can't just be shitty to everybody.
Yeah.
Eventually it's going to catch up to you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think we still have another 100 years of this culture war going on before whatever ended up happening. I do think, because of my own personal beliefs, I do think eventually our country will probably collapse because of my biblical beliefs. But I think we still have another 100 years or so of this war going on, and it's not going to end just because Trump won. It's not going to stop. You know what I mean? The Democrats will get back in. They're going to push their crazy stuff. So I think we have a long battle still ahead of us.
Do you think that third parties have a chance of getting in anytime?
I think because our country was so fed up with the current system that they were willing to elect a game show host to become president. I think that that's more open now, and I think if our kid comes in, is able to do what he wants to do, I think that will open the door. You know, that Ross Perot guy was right about a lot of stuff in the 90s. He's a real smart guy. So I think that we will see that. The only thing that scares me though is I don't want somebody like Mark Cuban though coming in. Yeah, I want it to be somebody like Trump, somebody who loves our country. You know, Mark Cuban, he's a smart businessman, but he ain't got no balls in life, no huevos. You know what I mean? He just, I want
Well, he
somebody
seems
like
like he holds a grudge, and he's mad at Trump because Trump, I guess, kind of rubbed his nose in it when he took some losses. Um, and these guys, I mean, that's the thing, some people hold grudges, but you can't in politics or big business, because you have to. I think that's a big mistake that we made over the past 10, 20 years as a government, is that we're like, well, I'm not going to talk to Iran. I'm not going to talk to Russia. And it's like, no, that's your job. You're a diplomat. You're supposed to make deals with people you don't like. You don't just talk to your friends. You have to talk to your enemies. Otherwise, wars are going to keep going on and stuff. It's insane to me that we refuse to speak to some people. It's this whole, we don't negotiate with terrorists, but then they'll call anybody a terrorist. This is a terrorist. And it's like, no, I mean, if there's a guy that's messing with you in your neighborhood constantly, and the cops don't do anything about it, nobody wants to do anything about it, sooner or later you got to go talk to him and just be like, look, and work it out. What's going on here. And the same way on a larger scale, and we're big, so we're kind of like the coolest kid in school. People want to knock the chip off our shoulder. People want to mess with us because we stand out. But we need to show people that we're their friends and that we're not just there to take from them and to bully them.
I agree. I think a lot of people are finally coming to realize that. And I think a lot of even Iraqi and Afghanistan veterans, they say they regret doing it. I stand by what they did, but knowing what I know now, would I vote for it? Would I say yes, agree with George Bush? No.
Yeah.
So I think it's gonna have to change, and I hope that that's what happens, man. It's gonna be interesting to see. We're gonna find out in another month, and it's gonna be a crazy ride. But I'm hoping this is a new American good times, some sort of political. People say it's a political revolution, and let's have somebody like MAGA in for 12 years, see what happens. But we'll see. It's gonna be a long road.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate this. Where can people find you on the internet? Do you? I know you're on Twitter. That's where I met you.
Yeah, that's the best place to find me. My name Steven Valdez II on Twitter, and that's where I post some travel stuff, experiences, and some of my own political views. I really appreciate you inviting me. We met through the space I was doing, and I'd like to talk to you again on that. And yeah, we have religion experience. I feel like me and you could probably talk all day just about this stuff. There's a lot of things, a lot of interesting conversations there. So
For sure, yeah. There's so much to talk about, and I have some prominent people on sometimes, but they always have their talking points, because, and I prefer just to talk off the cuff and just say what's on your mind, and then, maybe you contradict yourself. I have people on the left on and on the right on. I have a buddy of mine from Spain who's like, well, you kind of look like a hypocrite because you agreed with that guy on the right, and then on another episode you agree with the guy on the left. And I'm like, well, because maybe they made a good point on one way or another, and I think that we need to bring everybody together.
People are complicated.
Yeah, and we need to remember, and everybody seems to have forgotten that we are all brothers. We are basically connected by DNA, and we all
come from Adam and Eve.
Yeah, and we all want the same thing. Most of us want prosperity. We want a good future. We want a nice place to live. We want to be able to send our kids to good schools and to have them have a good future. And we want peace, and when we call people the devil, basically, which is what they did to Trump and what they do to a lot of people, then of course people are going to try to kill him. of course, people are going to try and, because especially people that have emotional problems, which mental problems just blew up during COVID, especially with the lockdowns and everything. A lot of people just lost their minds altogether. So yeah, kids like Crooks, even though something's off with Crooks and with that other guy, Ruth, also también, joder, I'm thinking having English, but Ruth also, those guys, they're not telling us everything about them. With Crooks, like this guy that Luigi Mangione that shot the CEO in New York, we know all about him. We know about his family. And there's all this information, but we can't find anything about Crooks. There was nothing on social media. He's 20 years old and he has nothing on social media. There's no information about him. And he was able to get in there and, with a range finder, and also the roof was empty. There are so many things that are not being told to us, kind of like with J6, and everything. It's just, and everybody just accepts, well, so many people just accept the narrative that's given by the media. And it's like, what? That doesn't make sense. It's like if you come home and you have a black eye and your girlfriend's like, what happened? I don't know. This guy just walked up and hit me for no reason. It's like, no, what'd you do? What happened? Tell me the whole
story.
Yeah. There's more to it. It's like if you, if the guy threw a rock and you said, well, I don't know, he just threw a rock out of the blue, no, he threw a rock because you did something, it still wasn't your fault, but you pissed him off, Yeah. So
I hope Cash Patel opens the books and all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and a lot of people are like, oh, now there's going to be retribution and stuff. And it's not retribution. I don't want revenge, but I think that if we're going to have a justice system, then we need to hold people account for breaking the law, and for really, some people are really ruthless and they'll destroy people's lives just because they believe different things than them, or they call them out on their corruption. If they say, I mean, look what happened to Julian Assange, look what happened to Snowden, and look what happened to Gonzalo Lira in Ukraine. They killed him. Basically, he died in a hospital, for a prison hospital, because he'd been in prison for speaking out against the war and for posting anti-Ukrainian, pro-Russian things, which apparently is illegal there. They don't have freedom of speech like we have here, but we still could have gotten him out. And it came out recently that, there were memos going back and forth. They knew what was going on. They could have gotten him out. We got Brittany Griner out of Russia by trading arms dealer for her, but we're not going to help an American if he's not, following the narrative that, oh yeah, this is a good war, go America,
That's what it's all about. Either you're a part of their team or you're not. There's no, I agree, man. We're gonna have to wait and see. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm gonna trust God, and I'm gonna see what happens. And I still believe in our country. And Trump winning again gives me hope that people have opened their minds, and that people aren't just soulless beings, not just on their phone all day. And we'll see what happens. We're gonna know pretty quick, and it's gonna be a battle. But I think for now, I think we're gonna win this battle, and we have to be ready for the next one.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks again, man. A ver si la siguiente vez tenemos una conversación en español, if you're up for it.
Sí, tal vez, Víctor, porque tal vez una persona pregunta a mí, yo, una palabra. So I just wanted to make sure that I didn't want to say one word wrong and then it's confusing for the people. But yeah, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it, and you're really good at this. And I want to see your YouTube channel keep growing, and I want to have more conversations with you again in the future. And you're really good at this, man. You're an interesting guy.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Well, thanks to all our listeners, and we will see you next time. Oh, and next week on the 29th, we're going to have, it's a Spanish episode, but it's going to have a lot of people over the last 2 years that I've had on the show. We're going to have them tell what they want to leave behind from last year and what they're expecting from the following year, from next year. And then also we're going to have debates. It's going to be interesting. So yeah, I hope everybody can stay tuned for that. That one's in Spanish, but I think you can probably get subtitles, or try using AI maybe. So until then, we will see you next time.